Hi and welcome to this lecture on the future of the physical store. I'm basing this paper on actually several years of studies, but I've chosen this future of retailing article from General Retailing as sort of a foundation. This article won a prize, an award for the best article in General Retailing that year, a couple of years back, and we used this model as sort of a central piece of it, where we look at two aspects of digitalization. The green one, the one that I will cover in this first part of this lecture, is digital tools that can be used in the physical store. The second part, the orange piece, is rather how we need to adapt the physical stores to an omnichannel world. So this is sort of the setting for these two lectures, divided into two parts. And I said I've been doing this research for several years. And when I started to do research on digitalization of retailing, I thought that I would be working with e-commerce, but obviously still 85% of all retail sales happen in the analog world, physical bricks and store, bricks and mortar stores. So obviously a lot of also the digital is digital tools that you can work with in the physical store. So that's why I emphasize this in this lecture. And the first project is about mobile phones. We talked a bit about this briefly on Monday when one of you had read an article about this. So this was the source for that discussion. In this paper, it was Lauren Beitel, one of the co-authors, who had sort of read somewhere in industry magazines that retailers, or actually brands that were displayed in the checkout areas of stores, suffered because people were paying attention to their smartphones instead of to the magazines and the chewing gums that usually are placed in that area of the store. So we wanted to look at that, and we found that the prominence of smartphones, people really, it's almost like the smartphone is a part of people's bodies. These figures are more or less the same wherever in the Western world you are. Sweden, 97% of all Swedes have a smartphone. In the US, it's 98%, but very comparable. For those of you who have kids, you should know that on average, parents of small kids spend twice as much time on Facebook every day as they do with their kids. And you can see their younger age groups use their mobile phone every other minute. I question that because I have 3 kids, teenage years, and that would mean that they would put their phones down every once in a while, and I don't see that happening. They are constantly looking at their smartphone screens. Around the kitchen table, it's easier to go into the app they are in and send them a message there. That's easier than to walk up, go around the table and lift their headphones and speak to their ears. And we sort of don't care anymore if it's data use or phone use, that we see it as just something that we use for everything. And companies produce apps and try to actually stimulate increased usage. So I guess it would be nice for companies to know if this is something that's good or bad for business. Point of departure, it could be good for business. It could be that in the dawn of smartphone usage, a lot of consultants and others spoke about how smartphones could be used for coupons, recipes, price search, and everything, shopping lists. So it should enhance sales. But like I said, our rationale for running these studies was rather around mobile blindness. In the US alone, it's said that mobile blindness leads to 3 million car accidents annually. 3 million car accidents every year because people text and drive. And as you can see, chewing gums and magazines have lost sales due to mobile blindness. So question is, which is true? Paper contains 3 different studies, 1 observation study at the checkout, and then 1 correlational study where we use eye tracking data, and 1 experiment where we also use eye tracking data. And at the checkout, we observed around 1,000 shoppers. A colleague of mine programmed an app so we could stand there and tick how many people are in line. Do they use their smartphone, yes or no? Do they look at any products? Do they buy any products? And what we found then was that actually 2/3 of the market is gone if you use your phone. So in the group of people who did not use phones in the checkout area, 15% bought something. But among the shoppers using their phone, only 5% bought something. So this is hand in hand with the industry magazines that I talked about initially. And then we went to a store where they had video screens in the checkout area, and we turned those on and off systematically to see if we could lure people away from using their smartphones. And we could, but then they started to look at the digital screens instead, so we still lost sales. So obviously there is some kind of visual distraction going on, and this inhibits people from buying stuff in the checkout area. So going from there, we had this big database of 360 shoppers walking around the store. So I said, why don't we look at that? Perhaps we can learn something from that. And in the database, we found that 26% of the student or of the customers used their phone during their shopping trips, and on average, 7% of the total shopping time was spent looking at the phone instead of looking at something else. This is eye tracking. So what do you think then? Do you think that people who use their phones spent more or less than those who didn't? Well, if this was a face-to-face setting and we hadn't discussed this on Monday, the majority of you would raise your arm when I said, how many of you think that people spend less when they use their smartphones? But case is, people spend more time when they use their smartphone, because the time or the phone consumes some time. So on average, 41% more. And they also spend more money. So from 29 euros to 41 euros, an increase with 41%. And this happens because, say you're buying something, phone rings, you pick it up, you stand back, you look around, and you see not just the apples or oranges that you were buying, but you see the pineapples or the melons, or you want to be by yourself, so you walk away to another department, and when you hang up, you see, oh yeah, toilet tissue, I should add that too. So obviously, for every second you spend on the phone, you spend 40 cents more. But there is a problem with this study. It's a secondary study, or it's secondary data. So it could be the case that there is some background factor that is the explanatory variable. Perhaps if you know that you are going for a major shopping trip, you want to save some time, so while you're in the store you make some phone calls, or you know that you're going for a major shopping trip, so you use your phone to put a shopping list into it or something like that. So there could be problems. So therefore we had to run an experiment. In this case, we took 120 customers who used to use their smartphone while they were shopping. We asked 60 of them to stay away from using their phone and 60 of them to please use their phone. 117 of the 120 understood the instructions, so they could be used in the analysis. And what do you think about the results now? And again, if this was a live face-to-face kind of thing, then the majority of you would still believe that you bought less when you used the phone, but at least some of you would have moved towards, perhaps you buy more. And actually, we find the very same results. So 38% more time, 41% more money spent. So from 31 euros to 44 euros. And for every time you pick up the phone, you spend on average 70 cents more. And this is this is due to distraction, because we had the shoppers fill out questionnaires at the end, so we could see that they were more distracted if they had used their phone. And we could see that people were moving around much more randomly in the phone usage group. So it was, for instance, 3 times as likely that you would walk back to a department that you had previously visited but left if you were using your phone. So the autopilot that we talked about the other day was gone, and you were instead, being interrupted, distracted by the phone, or when you connect to the real world instead to the phone, you think, oh, where was I? Oh yeah, bread. But you'd already passed the bread department, so you walk back. So you look at more products and you spend more time in the store. And this is what it typically looks like. So this is a smartphone user, and you can see she starts off here with among the sausages and other products on that shelf. It's worth noticing that the by far most commonly looked at visual stimuli in a store is other people's butts. So that's the perfect spot for ads, actually, other people's butts. Anyhow, she spins around, led by her finger pointing her way. She's out here for a while. Oops, what am I doing here? Back in, look at some butts, and then 30 seconds later she stops again where she was from the beginning. So this is typical for smartphone users, looking a bit confused. And this is typical for a non-phone user, speeding through the store, looking at some candy perhaps, some butts perhaps, but otherwise just speeding through, looking for the checkout. Quickly pick up the items that they're there to buy, not as impulsive at all. So obviously very different behavior. They walk faster. They walk almost twice as fast as the phone users. So people often ask, well, does it matter what you use the phone for? And the answer to that is no. Whether you use it for shopping lists or shopping related things, or social things like making phones or making phone calls or Facebook or so, you still have the effect. We also tested if people felt they were more satisfied with the shopping trip in either condition, because the retailers thought if people feel distracted and they've spent more time in the store if they use their phone, perhaps they don't like the store visit as much, but that was no difference regarding that. There was, however, a slight difference depending on how old you are. So the older you are, the stronger the effect is. I should say also that after this we had a bunch of retail organizations totally making a flip when it comes to how they treat phones in the stores. So for instance, it used to be the case that they told, like I in my store, I told my staff not to bring their private phones into the store. It used to be like that, but now I tell them that they should bring their phones into the store. And if a shopper is asking for a recipe or a discount or something, they are instructed to pick up their phone, use it to search for information and show the customer. So that way they teach the shopper to use their phone to look for recipes, look for discounts, look for product information, instead of printing recipes. So shoppers can just take a piece of paper with them. We now have the recipes printed and put in plastic. So, and there's a smartphone symbol, so we instruct consumers to pick up their phone and to take a photo. We have charging stages, places in the stores and so on. So we try to stimulate phone usage as much as possible. When we've done that, especially this fourth guy here, Venki, said, well, don't you have any other devices that we could measure? Venki is very good at looking at marketing aspects of apps. So he was interested in that. And then we have these integrated kiosks in the stores, and these kiosks are a bit like the terminals in the McDonald's restaurants nowadays, where you can put your order on a touch screen. So it's basically like that. So you have the kiosk here to the left, and it's an integral part of sort of the mobile universe of ICA. So you could log on into it, and then you can see your shopping list, your purchase history. You can look for recipes and so on. We've done a bunch of studies here, and actually we want to see what happens if you use a kiosk. Do you behave differently? and is it also dependent on what kind of information the kiosk serves you with. And in the first study, we found an effect of that people using the kiosk spend more. So they actually spend around 20% more, as you can see here. In the second study, we wanted to look at the content, and then we can see that, or we programmed the kiosks. They either showed only recipes, they showed only discounts, or they showed a blend of recipes and discounts. And then we can see that the effect only remains if they see recipes only. So as soon as you show some kind of discount, the prices blow away the inspiration you get from the recipes. And then we did online studies, and the online studies work like this. So you're sitting by your computer, you see this film, we pretend that you swipe your card, and then you get into this flyer or a recipe. Same products in both cases, so you perhaps see this coffee or this sauce or these drinks or ketchup or something like that. And when you've looked at this flyer, you go to a web page, and here you buy stuff. And so it's one of the two conditions, either a flyer first or a recipe first, promoting the same items, and then you get into the store where you buy stuff. And what we find here is that actually in the inspirational condition, you buy more, so it's the same as before. It's just there is one more thing, and that's in both cases you buy as much more of the promoted items. So if it's ketchup, for instance, you buy as much more of the brand that's in the flyer as you do if you are shown the recipe. But in the recipe condition, you do not buy only the brand that's being promoted. Say that the promoted brand is a private label, but you prefer Heinz. Then in the recipe condition, it's obvious that the thoughts or the purchase intentions that are stimulated within you are rather related to the category than the brand. So if you're a loyal Heinz buyer, you buy more of that. So in the flyer condition, you buy only the focal brand. In the recipe condition, you buy the focal brand to the same extent, but you also buy competing brands to an increased extent. And you also, in the recipe condition, buy complementary items. So if it's ketchup, for instance, you also buy more pasta. So it's obvious that in the recipe condition, it's not just the focal brand and the discount that you look for, but you get more inspiration to see the use of the product. After the shopping was done, we also asked about, okay, which thoughts did you have during the shopping trip? And then we could see that there was a big difference in the recipe condition. People were having thoughts about cooking. If they had seen the recipes, they had been transformed into the situation where they see themselves cooking the meal, making use of the products instead of just filling the pantry. So in one condition, you have a pantry filler, buying exactly what's on the list. In the other case, you have a inspired chef or baker who's sort of envisioning themselves using the product and started really, I need those spices, I need that and that and that. So therefore you get a lot more sales in the recipe condition. We also we programmed an app to see if we got the same effects using a smartphone, and we did. And we also did this test where we had people look at either a gardening magazine before they did the test, or looking through a cooking magazine. And what we find then is that in the gardening condition, the effect remains, but in the cooking condition, we don't find the effect anymore, meaning that this kiosk effect is as strong as the effect you get if you browse through a cooking magazine. And that would be that's like the dream. That's what you're after in a store. Imagine if you have a fashion store and you have someone going through the store looking in a fashion magazine. They would be much more inspired to sort of buy whatever products you sell. So that's perfect. Actually, so what this means that with the help of the content on the kiosk, you can either you can transform a pantry filler to an inspired chef or baker. And we've touched upon this a couple of times during this week, that 80% of the shoppers go into the store with the intention to find inspiration for what to cook for dinner, but they don't find anything. And to me, this is like my wife's brother's sister. No, my wife's brother's wife. She has a sister. My wife's brother's wife has a sister who's a personal shopper or shopping assistant. And my wife's brother's wife often says that when she goes to a fashion store, she doesn't see anything that she finds pretty or that she wants to buy, because she just, it's too much stuff. She just sees all the products there, but she doesn't find any inspiration. But when she brings her sister, within just a couple of minutes, she can come up with 3 different outfits that fit the taste of my wife's brother's wife, but also, it's trendy and, not too costly and everything. So she has the eye for making or turning the products into solutions, turning the pieces of garment, or the clothes into outfits. And this is also what potentially the kiosks or apps, I'm sorry about the background noise, sorry, it disturbs me too. She and this kiosk or any kind of interactive screen can become a shopping assistant that can do that job, that can help the shopper getting the inspiration he or she needs. So I'm really seeing a lot of potential in this, actually. And I think, combining the smartphone with this recipe function, that's 2 good things that could really be part of a solution to all those people wandering around the stores without getting inspiration on what to buy for dinner. Okay, and then we have this sensory projection project. This was originally a project where sensory projectors is like the kind of projectors that you have in a classroom. It's projecting a video on some surface, and in this case it also has sound and scent to it. And this guy, he had this idea that we should project adverts on entrance rugs in the stores, and the money that we got for showing the adverts should be used to clean the rugs. But I saw a potential in this because the light from these projectors were strong enough to almost create some kind of hologram. So it was really effective in the store. So what we did was that we set up experiments in stores. You can see the projector in the ceiling on the 3rd image where it says no projection. The projector is the big white box in the ceiling there. Otherwise, the control condition is just an end cap display, meaning that sales go up a couple of 100% if you compare it to not having the products on the end cap. The vivid projection, or the static projection, let's start with that, is this. So we add a video to it, but it's not so much movement. It's just a little movement, just a little action to sort of capture attention. And this is easy to produce. It's very cheap because it's the same information that you have on the digital screens. The vivid projection, however, is this. That's one of my daughters, by the way, a couple of years ago, a year and a half. You can see it's sort of projected onto the digital display. You can see how impressed my daughter is. So this is what it looks like. You have the projection projected onto both the display and onto the floor. And when you start it, it looks as if products fall out or fall down from the display and then onto the floor where it's being cooked. So this is more of a cooking show, so to say. And we did this for 4 different categories. We had tacos, we had pasta and tomato sauce, we had snacks, and we had a 4th alternative that slipped my mind right now. But you can see it's quite fun. A lot of kids stopped by to start to play and try to touch it. If you want to, you can Google or you can go to YouTube and look at Le Petit Chef Skull Works or something like that. Have made some similar stuff. Really nice things, fun to look at. Anyhow, you can see here that actually the static projection is the one that's performing the best. Here the sales increases look a bit not so big because here we blend in a lot of other data, but if you look at it like this, you get a stronger effect. So again, when it comes to people looking, the mixed reality one, the vivid works the best. So the vivid one is best at capturing attention, but both when it comes to stopping and buying, you can see that the static projection outperforms the control condition. Why do people stop more at the control than at any of the projected displays? Well, that's because they've been looking at the projections already, so they don't need to stop because the projections are really visible from far. So you can go and look at it for several seconds, so you have seen enough perhaps already when you don't have to stop. But you can see that control, that's already a lift of a couple of 100% from being only in the shelf, and then you get an extra 40% of that if you use the mixed reality one, and an extra 60% of that if you use the static projection. So obviously the static projection works the best, and the mediator or the explanation for this is that both the projections, but especially the vivid one, shows that it's better at making people understand that what they should use the products for. So again, it's a bit like the Kiosk one. You transform people from seeing products to seeing solutions. And we also added, as I said, sound and scent, and you can see that sound has a stronger effect than scent. And when we combine, so we use both sound and scent, we get even stronger effects. So it works on the whole very well, and I'm envisioning that you have this as in a big store. You would have 2 or 3 end caps with these projectors on top of all the end caps that, and perhaps sampling and everything that you have else to inspire in the store. So actually what we've done so far in this digital tools project, we've done 6 projects. The mobile one, the kiosk one, the sensor projection. We've also done a project with self-scanning. We talked about this also on Monday, where I told you that when people use self-scanners, so they walk around the store and they scan their product and put them in the bag immediately at the shelf. This makes people touch products more, look more at them, and rely more on the product information, so they buy healthier stuff. We talked then about that this might be lost now with the COVID-19 situation. Project 5 is a digital signage case beyond what Fredrik and I talked about yesterday. So it's actually it's a lot of screens in these stores. It feels more like you walk into some kind of you walk into Times Square or into Piccadilly Circus, and it just became too much. So we lost sales actually, because even though people felt really inspired, they stopped looking at the products and stopped asking staff, stopped looking at price tags. They just looked at the TV screens. Project 6 is about nudging. So we showed 2 different film clips. You can view them on my YouTube channel. In one of them, we showed Jocke, my friend, the co-owner of the store, is the chef. He's making a dish, and everything's shown in clocks. So do this for 12 minutes, do this for 3 minutes, do this for 30 seconds. In the other one, it's more about the quality of things. Do this until it looks ready, make sure that this is ripe. And the way, or the thing that happens is that if you see this clock one, you become more numerical and you look for prices. So we sell more of planned items and more of discounted items if we show the clock one. Whereas if we show the quality related one, people become more quality sensitive. So they buy more of high margin products. And we're also doing this now at H&M. So we're doing this with their app. I think I showed you, or I told you about it the other day, that they have a cool app where you can set it to in-store mode. Oh, I turned it off so it shouldn't disturb it. This is cool. It's a modem is called, or mode. Fashion is called mode in Swedish, so that's modem without an M. So they have on purpose written no fashion connection instead of no modem connection. So that's kind of funny. Anyhow, otherwise, if it was turned on, then I'd show you the camera function where you can just take a photo of a shirt and then you see if they have something similar. So they sort of play with that app and they want to know if that helps or reduces sales in their stores. And they also have the smart mirrors that are voice controlled. And I don't know if you see that, but the woman looking into the mirror, she has a black dress on. But in the mirror, she's wearing a white t-shirt and a black skirt. So you can talk to the mirror and the mirror can change the clothes, the color, the size. So you don't have to redress. You can just ask it to pretend you're wearing something else. And you can ask about product specifications and stuff like that, environmental footprint and so on. So those are studies to come. On the left, you have studies that we have done. They are all either published or in the publication process. And that was part one of this lecture, where I look at the future role of the physical store. So that was about the digital gadgets that you use in the physical store. The next part will be very inspired by Whole Foods Markets, H&M and IKEA, and we'll see at what you can do with the help of those stores or retailers as inspiration, how you can transform the grocery store into something that's more inspiring. And all these projects are sort of meant to support the physical store in an omni-channel world. So in a world where you make the purchases on your smartphone, on your computer, or in the physical store, it's good if the different channels have different roles. So we want to look at the physical store. What job should it do in this omni-channel world? Well, see you.